historical and legal claim for sovereign sea access, focusing heavily on the port of Assab.
That sounds like a very important topic. I know Ethiopia is currently landlocked, but I don't know much about the historical context or the legal basis for any claims. Can you start by explaining what the document defines as sea access versus just a port?
The document makes a clear distinction. A port is a facility for loading and unloading ships, which can be inland, like Hamburg. Sea access, or a sea door, is the direct connection point to the ocean itself, which is what Ethiopia fundamentally seeks.
That makes sense. So, the focus isn't just on having a functional harbor, but on the sovereign right to that coastal connection. Did the document discuss when Ethiopia historically possessed this right?
Yes, extensively. Historically, Ethiopia, dating back to the Aksumite era, utilized several vital ports along the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden, including Agilis, Massawa, and Assab. These were crucial frontiers for trade, diplomacy, and defense.
It's fascinating that they were so integrated with the coast. When did this historical access begin to erode, and what was the primary mechanism for losing control over Assab specifically?
The erosion is tied closely to the struggle for Eritrean independence. While Assab was considered Ethiopian territory and a vital asset, the loss culminated after the Eritrean referendum and subsequent international agreements.
So, the independence of Eritrea is the direct cause? The document must delve into the legal fallout from that separation, especially concerning the Algiers Agreement mentioned in the table of contents.
Precisely, the document heavily scrutinizes the Algiers Agreement of 1999. It argues that the agreement, which settled border issues, has significant procedural flaws that might render it invalid regarding the port's status.
What kind of procedural flaws are we talking about? If it was an international agreement, shouldn't it be binding on both parties?
The main argument here is one of authority. The Algiers Agreement was ratified by the executive branch before it went through the necessary parliamentary approval process mandated by Ethiopian law at the time. This lack of proper domestic ratification is a key legal challenge.
That's a strong point regarding internal legal procedure. But what about the treaties that established the border in the first place, like the 1900, 1902, and 1908 treaties with colonial Italy?
The paper argues that the Algiers Agreement relied on these colonial treaties to define the border. However, it suggests these older treaties might be considered null and void, partly because Italy broke them, for instance, by invading Ethiopia in 1935, thus invalidating the basis of the settlement.
If those colonial treaties are void, does that automatically revert the status of Assab back to Ethiopia? Or does international law step in to uphold the status quo established by the UN?
The document counters that the UN General Assembly Resolution 390 from 1952, which established the Federation, should hold greater weight. It implies that the colonial treaties were superseded by this resolution, which recognized Ethiopia's maritime status within the Federation.
I see a section mentioning the proximity factor or distance factor. How does geography play into this legal argument for regaining access?
The proximity factor argues that because Ethiopia is landlocked and geographically close to the coast, international principles should favor granting access to ensure its economic viability, similar to how some coastal nations serve their landlocked neighbors.
So, it's an argument based on necessity and fairness, beyond just treaty interpretation. What is the document's final conclusion on how Ethiopia can pursue this right today?
The conclusion strongly suggests that Ethiopia should challenge the legal validity of the Algiers Agreement based on its procedural defects and the nullity of the underlying colonial treaties. It advocates for using international law, particularly the 1952 UN resolution, as the foundation.
It seems the core strategy is proving that the mechanism by which access was lost was fundamentally illegal under both Ethiopian and international legal frameworks. That's a very detailed analysis.
Indeed, the paper meticulously examines historical records, treaty texts, and international legal precedents to build a case that Ethiopia's right to sea access, specifically through Assab, remains legally justifiable and should be restored.
Thank you for breaking down these complex legal and historical arguments. It certainly provides a much clearer picture of the depth of Ethiopia's claim.